Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back. This is our fourth and final lunchtime update on planning for the new curriculum. I'm sure you've got the idea by now, so I'm going to start with the introductions. So I'm Chris Fisher and I look after the curriculum for the National School, and I'm joined by Jane Lynch, our STP Training Programme Director today, and Steph Pinches, my colleague, will be joining you on the chat function as well. So we're going to be talking about the core curriculum today. So just to let you know, this session will be recorded. We have recorded all of the previous sessions and they are available on the website now if you want to check back. As you enter the webinar, your camera and your sound system should be disabled, so that recording will just feature us as presenters. The chat function is open to you, however, so if you've got any questions as we go along, please do pop those in the chat box. Steph will put those questions to us later in the session, so we'll do our best to answer those for you. I will give you some more information on our drop-in sessions later on today. If you've got a more complex question or you want some more detail from us, there is an opportunity for you to come back and talk to us about more in-depth questions that might be beyond the scope of answering today. Just to continue to be upfront with you, we're not going to talk about recruitment today. I know things are coming to a head there, but it's not on the agenda for today's session. We are just going to be talking about the core modules for the new curriculum starting this September. So I think that's all from me for now. I'm going to hand over to Jane.
Hi everybody, hopefully you can hear me and you can see the slides moving as we go through them. So today we're going to give an overview of the core module. We're going to go through each of the different ones that we've got within the core modules for the new curriculum. So there are 4 of them now. The names and contents has changed slightly and these have been updated to make them fit for practice now. Essentially, they're all still doing the same thing, though. They're providing the cross-speciality professional skills required by all clinical scientists. So the aim of the review was to make sure that the curriculum was fit for purpose and up to date. And we asked all of the different groups within the curriculum review, what should a clinical scientist be able to do on day 1 of the job? So what's come out of the curriculum review really reflects what they said about that. So it reflects the current practice that they expect of a newly qualified clinical scientist. It reflects the role of a clinical scientist, but it's allowed to evolve with practice. As with the rest of the curriculum, the modules that we've got here should be flexible enough for you to apply your local and specialty practice and to grow and evolve with your practice. Accessibility of practice is really important. There's a lot of experiences in here which may be outside of your department. They might need your trainees to go looking for a little bit of training and a bit of involvement with other healthcare scientists, with other members of the MDT, with patients and carers and the wider public. But they should all be available to you with a little bit of thought. So the first one I'm going to talk about is the professional foundations of healthcare and science module. So this covers lots of themes, some but not all of them are listed here, and they'll be quite recognisable to you from the talks that we've had during the curriculum review and also just through your normal practice. Things like equality, diversity and inclusion are really important. Well-being, patient experience and engagement. So all of these things are things that have come together to make up the professional foundations module. So we're going to run through some of the requirements of these modules, talking particularly about timing. Some of the competencies have got indicative timeframes to them, some of them don't. They're spread throughout the whole of the programme. I'm going to talk a little bit about the expectations. Importantly, what's not expected in a few cases. A few ideas on how to approach them, and we're going to suggest some considerations for the competencies. As in other modules, it's things to think about. So it's not directive or exclusive. It's just a little bit of information, because we know that some considerations are more difficult for areas where within the professional themes, as these are very wide, that we're expecting all healthcare scientists to be able to do them. So it's a very broad basis that we're talking about. And I'd advise you to emphasise to your trainees not to leave these professional foundations competencies right till the end of the programme. They should be started early and spread throughout the whole of the curriculum. It would be quite difficult if they're trying to cram them all into the very end of it. We did a lot of work on the curriculum following feedback from the general public, from a wide group of people, including experts in the field, yourselves, assessors, HEIs, and also people from a PPI perspective. We got people who were service users to comment as well. So there was a lot of work done afterwards just to make sure that everything was fit for purpose. So there was also a lot of work done on the academic content that goes with this, but that's not what we're going to focus on today. We're talking about the workplace here rather than the academic in detail. There is some reflective practice required. This was discussed briefly in last week's session, but also we're going to be putting out some more workshops on this, so look out for any information on our website that might be useful to you in the future. So I want to talk a little bit about this one. All our competencies are numbered, and those numbers don't necessarily mean that they're the order you have to do things in, apart from this one. Competency 1 is the one that we suggest that you start and get your trainees to work on really early in the programme, because it sets the objective for the trainee going forward about their well-being. It's really important for the trainee to get some good habits early in the programme. We know it's a very busy 3 years, and this particular competency can help to establish some good habits. It'll also help you as a training officer to get to know your trainee and to start a conversation about well-being. One of the phrases that came up during the writing of the module was the phrase "a user manual for me," and that's what we want the trainees to come up with here. It's a little bit about themselves and how they work best and how they interact best, so that hopefully your relationship over the 3 years is going to be optimised. There's lots of other models and ways of approaching it. That was just one suggestion we had. And it could be as simple as a discussion, but it'll still need robust evidence on one file. So maybe a plan, maybe some minutes from a meeting, that kind of thing. We're not expecting you to deal with issues outside your scope of practice, obviously, but do please check that you know where to signpost your trainees to if they have any problems, if they've got any challenges that they want. As a training officer, there's lots of help on the website to help you direct your trainee appropriately, and you'll also have lots of stuff going on within your own trust that your trainee as an employee is entitled to access. So competency 4 is another really interesting one that we wanted to highlight today. The term digital footprint might not be familiar to everybody, but really it's one of the things that's very important at the moment, especially with the rise of social media and things like that. It's important that trainees understand that their digital presence it speaks for them as a professional. So as they enter your employment, they'll need to understand what expectations your employers have of them, what the various professional bodies expect of them. And really it's this competency is about looking at their own particular footprint that they've got at the moment, thinking whether that's still valid, does it need changing, do they need to create one? They need to think about all these kind of things. So it's not just about social media, it's about governance policies, it's about email, it's about patient privacy, all these kind of things. So there's a lot for them to think about here, and it's been formatted into a competency so that they can really have a good look at that and make sure that what they're doing is fit for practice going forward. So the next one is competency 5, which is exploring the experience of a patient on their journey. And this one's about appreciating what it's like to be a patient within your organisation. And for some of the trainees, this actually will be a reality. Some of them may well be patients within it, or they may have family members or friends who are patients within the organisation. So it's about making sure that the trainee is safe and that patients are safe. So confidentiality, consent and things like that are all considered within this. The curriculum review group talked about different ways to do this when writing the competency and came up with loads of suggestions, and these included following a patient or a patient pathway, interacting with patients in the specialism, attending a service user group, attending a patient advice and liaison service, attending a patient support meeting or a patient board, or applying a patient-focused service or quality improvement tool. And there's a number of those, including one that's called the 15 steps. So you can kind of direct your trainees to lots and lots of different areas for this. They can find one that they're comfortable with and follow it through to just understand a little bit more about the patient journey. There's no set amount of time for this competency. It's going to vary by trainee and by what they want to do with it, but it may well follow from their rotational experiences. So as a trainee is going out into some of the specialisms that are most closely connected with yours, that might really help them to understand a patient journey. So for my own background is in cardiac, and one of the things that we focus on quite a lot is shortness of breath. So a patient attending may well have both respiratory and cardiac tests to understand that. So it's good that the trainee can go out and explore a bit more of those. There's also various points in the clinical assessment module that will help them to think about the patient as a whole journey. So all these experiences can be put together to come up with a really good competency here. Competency 9 is an interesting one as well. We don't really expect trainees at this point to be fulfilling a management role, so they shouldn't be completing HR processes as part of this competency, but they'd be beginning to develop skills for when they might have management responsibilities. So this competency is about them just starting off on a journey there. It doesn't need to be somebody who's new to the department necessarily. It could be somebody who's already there, who's learning a new role. So they might be changing sections, or they might be working a new shift pattern, and the trainee might have some experience of having done that. So it's about putting them together with other people to share those experiences and help other people to manage a change, really. It could be a new STP trainee, so could they support STP induction? It's important that you make sure you support the trainee as needed, so that you're both aware of how to signpost or raise any significant concerns. Some of the ideas we had for this range from the very, very simple. So as a new person in a department, the trainee might be able to help them to find out who everybody is, to find out where the locker is, to find out where the dining room is, all these kind of things. It could be really important, or it could be something much more specific within the department that they're offering somebody mentorship or that kind of thing going forward. So there's lots and lots of ways that they can think about that one. Competency 10 really is something that's come up before. It's not something new, but the wording's a little bit different here. You probably are already aware of lots of ways to approach this. So it might include things like being a STEM ambassador, being an advocate for Harvey's gang, involvement with schools and patient groups, that kind of thing. It's a really important skill, and it's basically about making science accessible. And we know from the COVID pandemic that it's really important that scientific communication is really good. So teaching your trainees these skills early, getting them out there engaging with the public, is a really good thing to do going forward. Competency 11 is about delivering a learning session. Now we have a picture here of somebody in a very formal environment with a little cap on, and they're obviously a really good academic person. It doesn't need to be as formal as that. It's really just about your trainee delivering a learning session to other people, talking about what they do. So it could be any opportunity that they have to share their knowledge and expertise across different specialties or professions. Competency 16, you will probably need to arrange for your trainee. So it's about them attending a more senior management meeting. So it's an opportunity for you to take the trainee to a meeting that's beyond their current practice, preparing them for later responsibilities so that they can see the bigger picture, and to put the specialism in the wider context of healthcare environments. So really understanding where their specialism fits within a wider environment. It's up to you to find an appropriate meeting and make sure it's suitable for the trainee, and make sure that the trainee appreciates the confidentiality requirements. We're asking the trainee to reflect on their experience here, and as we mentioned earlier, reflective writing is something that we're really concentrating a lot on the new curriculum, and there will be some more information and more workshops in the future to help trainees with that. So just to highlight the last couple of competencies, these are focusing on innovation, change management and leadership. Those aspects are also covered in other competencies as well, but these ones are particularly about that change management process. They're about the differences between top-down and bottom-up innovation and change. They don't need to be huge changes, but they should be led by the trainee, and they could even be the same improvement. But this might be one that you keep an eye on as a training officer throughout training, for them to come up with an opportunity. So just be aware that this is coming at some point. It also doesn't need to be a different new way of working for every trainee, but each trainee will need to contribute. Moving on to the work-based assessments, these have been introduced into the professional foundations module. They weren't really there before, but within this module we've now got a need for the trainees to do 4 case-based discussions and also 4 of the listed DOPs and OCs. The case-based discussions really focus on the professional skills. OCs have a focus on communication. Where trainees aren't really working in a patient-facing role, they don't actually need to have patient interaction there. These have been worded with enough scope that there are options there for trainees who have less patient-facing to interact with other healthcare professionals, perhaps, to complete these tasks. They do still include patient history taking, and again, that's quite a broad remit. It doesn't necessarily need to be taken from the patient. It can be taken from another healthcare professional. And it's important that you think about this as it relates to your own specialism. So patient history is used loosely. It should be contextualised for the specialism that we're asking the trainee to complete it in. So not all specialisms will need a 3-generation family history, but if you're a genomic counsellor, you probably will. If you're doing life sciences, you could include an immunology allergy history. For radiotherapy, trainees should consider, what do I need to know about the patient to adapt this treatment to their needs? For radiation safety, perhaps instead of thinking of a patient, you might think member of staff. So it all needs to be thought about kind of with the background of which specialism you're in, and it's been worded specifically to allow that to happen. For microbiology, it might be considering things like where's the patient been, who've they been in contact with, and expertise in contact tracing now is really talked about and widespread, so it's something we all understand a little bit better, but microbiology might really need to do that to a higher degree than most people. Moving on to the research skills in healthcare science module, there are a couple of competencies that have been introduced for this one, and this isn't about increasing the workload or even about repeating it. It's about sharing the trainees' project and learning from this across the university and the workplace. So really linking these 2 ways of learning better. So it's bringing back what learning they're doing at the university more closely into the workplace. For the STP project, there's a new name for this module now, and that's in recognition that the work undertaken might not always be what's considered classical research. So it's being called a project rather than a research project now. The projects need to fulfil academic requirements and contribute to improving patient care exactly as before, though. And we've introduced 2 competencies into this module, again, not to repeat the work, but just to ensure that it's linked back into the workplace. So as training officers and colleagues, you get to hear more about these projects and you get to understand what's come out of them and what the trainees learned from it. Trainees might also, sorry, just one more point on that last one. Trainees might also have some of these specific competencies already in place. So a lot of the HEIs already do days where they get the trainees to come and present their projects. So that might already be happening. So it's not necessarily something you need to do. It's just something you need to get a bit more involved with your training. Now this is a new module, but it's a very familiar concept. This is replacing the elective, and it's called a module now called the Individual Professional Development. This is really about training our clinical scientists with the future skills they're going to need, not only to register with the HCPC, but to stay registered. So it's including managing their CPD going forward. It focuses mainly on CPD, and it's an opportunity for trainees to develop their own practice in areas not covered by the curriculum. So where in the past they went off and did an elective for 6 weeks, often abroad, we've made this a lot easier for them to adapt to themselves, to make sure that it's something that's really relevant for them, that it sets a good kind of a baseline of what expectations of CPD are going forward, so they get into that habit early, and they they can understand why they're doing CPT, what it means, and how to really keep it up throughout their career going forward. So please don't say elective. We've changed the name of that. It's kind of a different way of looking at things and grounding them with something that's really useful for them going forward. The competencies work through the process of this individual professional development. So firstly, trainees are going to identify a development need. They'll then need to create a plan to meet it, and then they'll record how it was met. There's no set time frame, and it can be approached at any point in training. There's no set amount of time which the experience should take. It could be one big event, or it could be one or many smaller ones. It really depends on the trainee's need. And it might be helpful to consider the trainee's plan in line with any departmental or organisational policies. So any guidelines that you have or general approaches to CPD within the department, just to make sure that whatever the trainee's doing, is that appropriate for a member of staff within your own department? Does it fit with the general way of developing that you've got for all of your trainees? One example that comes to mind from my own cardiac background might be to spend some time in a department which serves a different population to the host department. So for example, if you've got a purely adult service, you might want your trainee to go and experience some paediatric patients to see how things are done differently there, and to see if this is something they want to incorporate as they move forward, because they may not stay in your own department. They might be thinking about where can the STP experience take them. So introduce them to other ways of working while they're doing this, if that's what you feel is what they need. Competencies 7 and competency 8 can be ways that you find an appropriate development need for the IPD. So these are the multi-source feedbacks. They're not something new. This is something that's happened through STP all the way through. So there's a multi-source feedback in the midpoint of training and a multi-source feedback towards the end. And that might highlight some development needs. So think of this as a way to perhaps progress ideas that come out of this can go into the IPD as a way of tackling that, so that when you come back to competency 8, hopefully they'll have developed those particular areas that were highlighted in competency 7. So EDI, equality, diversity and inclusivity, feature heavily in this part of the curriculum. And this is something that's been worked on a lot in conjunction with feedback. So when the curriculum review was being done, it was perhaps at a really timely point, because EDI has become very, very important, very, very well known over the last few months, and it's helped us work together with our trainee networks and the wider feedback that we had to try and develop a much more robust competency to go with this particular module. So the actual competency that was brought in is to work on the NHS Constitution, the NHS values, which hopefully you'll all know and your trainees will know really well. And there's a competency in there which looks at your practice or a patient pathway, and it actually looks at whether that's equitable for access and inclusivity for all your patients coming through. So this was something that was suggested after the review within the feedback, and it kind of was adopted through that feedback, just to show that really it's an important thing. We acknowledge how we need to be thinking this going forward, and the timely manner of it coming up was really important and really helpful to us. A little bit about phases. So all the modules, with the exception of the foundations and IPD modules, have suggested phases for completion. Those 2 modules should be considered throughout the training. Don't leave them to the end, but the rest of them we've given you a bit more guidance on when they should be happening, so that your training plans will be easier to create. So the phases of training are shown here, and the rotations will take up some of year 1, but they will also allow for some of that phase 2 specialty training to start. And the phase 3 specialty training also can spread over years 2 and 3. This is just an example of how the rotations are working. So the rotations are a little bit more flexible now. They can take anywhere between 4 and 8 weeks, depending on what you want to achieve from them and what the trainee wants from them. But that gives us a little bit of flexibility to now to bring some of the specialty training into year one. So the darker or the mid blue in that first line shows that there's a little bit of what Chris has always referred to as wiggle room. So we can bring some of that specialty training earlier, and that just allows a little bit more time for the really important training going through second and third years to make sure the trainees really have those specialism skills that we want them to have by the end of it. The professional foundations and the IPD, as I say, should be spread throughout. So they should be thinking about that in the first phase, in the second phase, and completing it in the third phase, not leaving it all to after their IAC or their final exit exam, whatever that might be, is due towards the end. So we really want people to be thinking about those core skills all the way through their training. So I'm going to hand back to Chris at this point because I think she's got a little bit more information about where we're going next with this.
Thanks, Jane. So I just want to talk very briefly about the future of the STP curriculum. So we have talked a lot through these sessions about developing a curriculum that will grow with you. However, we know that won't continue forever. So what we also need to do is keep an eye on that curriculum. Jane, I think we've just lost the slides there and got your desktop. We're going to keep an eye on that curriculum moving forward. So I don't have exact mechanisms at the moment, but we are going to want to continue to keep an eye on that curriculum moving forwards and continue to gather your feedback on that. So as I say, don't test me right this second, but we will hope to have a mechanism for doing that coming to you shortly. There we go. So you've seen these before, but I'm just going to skim through the rest of these slides for the time being. Oh, I don't know what's going. Oh, there we go. We've got them. We've got the slides moving forwards, and Steph will help you out with the links in the chat as well. So we've it keeps disappearing, Jane. I don't know what's going on. I tell you what, let me see if I can get it up over here. But we've got the links for the chat section. So we've done four lunchtime update sessions now. Those are all on the website, and this will follow shortly, so they'll be available for you to check back with in the future if you'd like to. So we're also going to be doing some drop-in sessions in the future as well. So you should be able to see those on screen now. So our drop-ins are exactly as they say on the tin. We our colleagues are available between 12 and 1:30. It's not a presentation session, so it does rely on you coming and asking some questions, but it's exactly what that session is for. If you walk away from today feeling a bit more confused than you came in, if you've still got questions or real particular issues about your own training, your own department, then you can pop into those sessions and talk to us about those. So as I say, if you don't have any questions, they do get a little bit awkward. So anytime between 12 and 1:30, you can come and talk to us there. So just to highlight the couple of areas that might be useful for you on the website, we've got the guidance for working with the 2022 STP curricula up now, which very much follows the information that's been in these sessions, a little bit more information on training planning and accreditation processes that will be coming up soon for you as well. So just to mention Train the Trainer as well, continuing to run those sessions and getting very popular at the moment. We've got the Train the Trainer formats, kind of an original flavour Train the Trainer if you're new to training. If you've got a bit of experience, then you can join our Advanced Train the Trainer as well if you're wanting to up your knowledge there. We have sessions booked for February and March and then for May. So you should have heard from us already if you're booked onto those sessions, or will do very, very shortly. But we are collating interest for further sessions. So if you do want to do that, please pop your name on the list on the website and we will let you know when we're running the next sessions there. So just before I open the floor to questions, I do have just one question to ask of you. We are going to pop a very, very brief survey in the chat box in a moment or two, just to gather some feedback from you, whether you found these sessions useful, whether the time works for you, and I think most importantly, if there's any other information you'd like from us in the future around working with the new curriculum. So that should just take you a moment of your time, and I really do mean a moment of your time. I hate it when you're still there 10 minutes later and they said a minute. So if you could fill that in for us, that would be really helpful. So I'll hand over to Steph. Have we got any questions today, Steph?
Yeah, we've got one question. Can the STP project be fulfilled by the MSc research project, or do trainees need to undergo a second clinical project within a department specifically for this competency?
Yes, absolutely. That is exactly the idea. So trainee is only doing one project. We're not asking them to do two projects. So it was the module was held in the curriculum previously. You should all be very familiar with this idea that the trainee does a project. Depending on trainee and where they're based, it might be more based in the university, it might be more based in the workplace, but it will be overseen by both elements. And you're going to use that one single project for your MSc, but also bringing it into the workplace as well. So those couple of competencies are just to make sure that you are sharing the information between your university studies and into your workplace as well. With all of those projects having a clinical focus, there may be some really fantastic findings from your STP project that you can bring into your workplace. That might be another place you can start implementing change if there's something from your project that you can bring forward into your practice as well. So it is one project that you're doing. So we're not mean enough to ask for two from the trainees. So one project continues. Did that cover it, Jane?
I think so. You explained it much better than I did.
Anything else there, Steph?
No, that's all the questions.
Thank you very much, everybody. I hope this has been useful for you. As I say, if you can pop us that information into that survey, if there is anything further you want to know, and we might revisit some of these sessions in the future if they have proved useful for you. We will continue the information about working with the new curriculum, and we'll continue that conversation running up to September to support you with the start of those new trainees. So thank you very much, everybody, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.